Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Manifest. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Michaela, Drea, and Jared all interrogating the three suspects. What's his name? Jace, his brother, and the dude Corey, but none of them are willing to break. In particular, Jace's brother is willing to, but it's just like, well, he wants to, but he can't because it seems like he's too afraid of his brother, or at least something else. And it's like, okay, so obviously for Michaela, she's like, because obviously this is connected to her callings, but she's not 100% sure because now she's getting the feeling like, well, maybe this is connected to the callings in the sense that when it's all said and done, like maybe this has something to do with Zeke, so she wants to try and figure it out, but also she has to worry about the wedding, and she ends up bringing it up to Jared because Grace was going to invite him. I was suggesting Michaela invite him, but she was like, no, that's weird and it's awkward. But Jared's like, oh, I'm happy for you. And you know, it is an awkward thing of like, yeah, telling your ex-fiance that, hey, I'm getting married to someone else. It's like, ooh, just like your relationship has just kind of had so many peaks and valleys, and it's just like, it's just like so much has kind of gone on. So you kind of feel a little bad for Jared, but he's trying to be supportive and everything because obviously he cares very deeply for Michaela. And so obviously everyone's kind of working together to try and make this day magical. Like a whole bunch of family is gathered. Like, you know, Ben is putting stuff up and, trying to get stuff right for the wedding. But at the same time, like, there's a whole situation with obviously like Zeke's condition is getting worse to the point like his body is like literally going even further with kind of having sheets of ice on it, like because I didn't like they've been jumping all over the place time frame wise. We're literally down to the last 2 damn days. I'm like, really? We're already there. He literally has only 2 days left until like his death day, and I'm like, Jesus, that puts things in a lot of perspective of like, holy crap, like to really know that you're literally going to die in 2 days. That sucks. That's always that interesting debate where people are like, oh, would you like to know how you died or, when you die? Because it's like both are sucky options because it just means that the closer you get to knowing when you die is going to be sucky. I mean, the sucky thing is for Zeke, he knows how and when he's going to die. He knows like, oh, I'm going to die this specific day and I'm going to die the way I originally was supposed to die, to a certain extent. So it's like, so that's kind of fascinating all on its own, right? Well, fascinating and kind of like, oh, that's shitty type of way is what I mean. But Ben has a calling, but it's of the plane exploding, which I'm like, why are we calling back to that? That was something at the end of episode 1, wasn't it? The plane exploding. So it's like, why are we going back to that? And I guess there's like reasoning to that, which I'll kind of explain later on, my thought process behind it. But nevertheless, what we also find out at the same time while Ben's like discovering all that, because it's like Michaela's hoping that maybe whatever it is calling that Ben's got, maybe it's connected to maybe in some shape or form it's connected to Zeke. So it's like, oh, she wants to make that happen. So when it's all said and done, though, the place that those guys were making that, meth and stuff like that, turns out that place blew up, which is like, that doesn't make any sense because literally all the chemical stuff was taken out of there, which is kind of an empty place. So why did it blow up? So it's like, is someone else kind of a partner with this? Because it is interesting timing because like while Ben's having this vision of like the plane exploding, that place, their meth lab exploded, even though there was nothing there for it to explode. So obviously a home dude is kind of threatening. It's like, oh, like, it's like, oh, when I get free, the first visit I'm going to visit is that blonde, talking about Michaela. And obviously, Drea has to pull Jared off of him. So it's like, okay. I was like, that's why I kept being like, what is this dude's deal? Hell, we even see later on, they ended up breaking out because they were on the bus ride and they were able to escape. And he's even to the point, like, Jace is beating up on that cop, and they're like, dude, do you want to add cop killing too? Because even I was like, that's interesting. You're willing to handcuff the cop, but then he starts beating on him because, like, Michaela had talked about it earlier in the episode. Well, it was like one of them. I think it was Michaela who talked about it to Jace, the fact is that he has anger issues or whatever. So we see that kind of implemented out. But it's like, so it's like they have no intentions of killing a cop or whatever. So it's like, but I'm like, what is your whole deal? At the same time, it's like, Zeke and Cal, that was a super cute moment. Because I didn't even really correlate it, but I think when Zeke is with Cal, it's like having a little brother. And I think for him, it's kind of like almost like a reminder of his sister. I think it's almost like that sibling connection, especially for him because he ends up talking about it later on. But Cal had given him so much. It's like because of Cal, like Cal saved his life when he came back and everything and brought him to Michaela. It's like he gave him like so much that he was able to do in all this time is because Cal was able to kind of help him basically get a second chance. And so he's up there trying, because Cal's like, shouldn't a wedding be a happy time, but now you're dying and everything, which, for Zeke, it's like, it's kind of hard for him to accept too. But the fact of the matter is, he wants Cal to throw him a bachelor party. So we see them, it seems like they drunk a whole bunch of soda and stuff like that, Sugar Rush and stuff like that. And then they play a game of Monopoly, and it was super adorable, because he was like, yeah, this is the best, bachelor party I ever had. And I was like, oh, that's super adorable, dude, At the same time, you have Olive and TJ having their issues, because apparently like TJ had been a little off the entire time, because she was like, oh, you want to go over winter break, like snow boarding or whatever. And I'm like, oh, like, because at first he was like, no, I'm not really good at it. I was like, is that him saying that because like, oh, like maybe it has some kind of connection to his mom? That's what I thought it was, and he just wasn't sharing with Olive. Turns out we find out later on that basically a couple weeks ago he had already put in for like a grant to go to Egypt. It's not for personal stuff. It's about looking into this Alzura's situation. And the fact is that, for him, it's like coming back after 828 and also surviving the fire, at the club. Like for him, he feels like he was meant to, this is his purpose. It's like it has to be, so he can't stick around here. He has to find answers, because he thinks like if he solves this Alzura's situation, maybe he can stop the death date, which obviously for Olive, it's like so much is happening already. This is my aunt's wedding. Zeke is dying. And now you're throwing this on me like last minute and stuff like that, And the sad thing is like, TJ wants her. It's like, why don't you come with me? Because he's like, I want you in my life. I love you. But it's like, for her, it's like, I want to stay here because, it's like, I want to be there for my mom, and, especially she wants to spend as much time as she can with Michaela, her dad, and Cal, considering the death date and everything, because we don't know what that situation is going to look like. So it's like, we want to spend as much time with them. She even suggests like, I want to be there with my little sister, especially because like she's going to have to be there to kind of explain like, oh, why her aunt, their dad and their brother isn't, so it's like you want to spend as much time, especially because let's not forget, she lost so much time with Cal, so it's like probably trying to almost in a way kind of make up for it, with Eden, of like trying to make, be there for her, to be in her life, so. But TJ's like, we're not breaking up, like I just feel like I got to do this, but kind of don't forget about me type of situation. And like, I basically, when he's done, he wants to kind of come back and pick the relationship back up. I mean, is it going to be probably going to be a little hard to have the whole, I mean, they might try the whole long distance relationship, but it's just interesting to see that this is where TJ's path is, potentially taking him. Everything with Ben was interesting, because he followed he went to the airport with the plane that exploded, and it was like, okay, so what am I supposed to find here? He runs into a dude named Ward. Ward's the one who kind of like gave the okay for the plane to fly, and basically he's been having callings and stuff like that, but for him, he's like, I haven't been able to sleep, I haven't really had a real job, because for him, he blames himself, because he's like, whatever went down with the plane, I cut a lot of corners, I just kind of was like, yeah, I just want to get back home and stuff like that. So he feels like he kind of pushed everything, and he's like, whatever happened with the plane is on me. But like Ben tried to be like, we landed in New York, yeah, but he's like, something probably like whatever went wrong was on his part. But they end up kind of comparing notes between his diagnosis of the plane and the other diagnosis of the plane, like, by other people, and it turns out no, like everything is aligned, like it wasn't issues with the plane. So Ben, it's like, it's okay that you have nothing to feel guilty about. But then it's like, what happened to the plane? What happened to in all that time? And like Ben's like, that's the $1 million question. And as he was leaving, he had another calling about the plane exploding. But then he finds out like, oh, where am I? I'm right in front of this shop. And it turns out that shop is where their dad, because their dad had sold all their mom's stuff, because Ben had suggested like, oh, why don't you wear mom's wedding dress? But their dad had already sold it. Keeping too much stuff of hers was, kind of too painful after she passed. And obviously, like Ben and Michaela, like we're watching the old home video, and you can see it kind of breaks Michaela, because it's like her mom's never gonna, like, her mom could have been there obviously to walk her down the aisle with the whole Jared situation, but sadly life didn't play out that way. And now it's like, here we are, the moment's there. Obviously it's not with Jared, it's with Zeke, but it's like her mom's not there, and obviously that's very disheartening for her, and they were hoping like, hey, maybe like, wearing her wedding dress or something, like she's a part of you, or at least her veil. But like I said, her dad gave all that away. And obviously for Michaela, she starts worrying, because she's like, I don't want to go through this wedding. Because at first she has that talk with her dad, because it's like, Dad, knowing, it's like, she's like, it's just, she's kind of getting stressed out by it all. And even he's like, it's okay. Like, he was like, I felt like, an iron lung was around me when out during my wedding to your mom. And in fact, because he was nervous. And it's like, and she brings up the question of like, if you knew that mom was sick like she was when she passed, like, would you have gone through with the wedding and yourself? And he was like, yeah, just to be with your mom, married to her, even just for 5 minutes, I would have given everything. And then, I think, that kind of pushes Michaela to kind of do, but then she kind of falls back a little bit because like she thought Ben's calling and stuff like that would have led to something about helping Z, but now it didn't. And now she's scared, and it's just like because like she kind of went with the flow of things because there was some part of her brain that was still like, no, maybe something will come through last minute. I just got to have faith, believe in the callings and stuff like that. Maybe it will all work out in the end, but Ben didn't really find anything. So now she's thinking like maybe the wedding should be called off, unless there's a sign or something. And that sign was her brother coming back with, hey, look, I found mom's veil. The callings led there. Now I'm wondering, was that the actual thing? Like it was meant to do that? Or was that just like a happy accident that, you never know what's fully like, oh, this is the calling. And then another side of it is like, oh, this is kind of just a happy accident, And so they go through the wedding. Sadly, Jerry ends up leaving. He ends up dapping up with, Zeke of like, as basically as everything's concerned, it's okay. But the moment he saw Michaela in the wedding dress, it's just, obviously it's going to hit you a certain way. I even love like Drea being like, when Zeke and Jerry had their moment, she's like, yeah, that was like, what was it like, that is like the dictionary definition of awkward. It was like, yeah. And it's just like, and then immediately my brain was like, you don't think Drea and Jared? I don't know. Could be. You never know. But yeah, that ended up playing out. That would even be weird too, because it's like, oh yeah, you're her new partner, and you potentially being with her ex. That'd be a whole can of worms all on its own. So that was really interesting. But then when everything's said and done, the wedding proceeds and everything, and it's just this beautiful moment. I didn't even talk about freaking Zeke having to explain everything to his mom, like on the wedding day, because she's like, she doesn't want to be there because like, oh, if your dad's going to be here, like this, everything he put us through, like I can't be here. But then Zeke has to drop the bomb, like, yeah, mom, there's not going to be other moments. This is kind of it. I'm dying. She's like, no, they'll find it. It's like, yeah, mom, there's no finding a cure for what I've got. But the fact of the matter is, he's like, the fact is this past year has given me so much. I was able to kind of resolve a lot of my past, like repair our relationship, found Michaela, repair my relationship with dad. Like so much was able to happen in this year that I'm grateful for. And to be with the woman that I love and have you by my side, mom, like, that just be like the perfect moment. I wouldn't want anything else. I was like, the feels. Even that moment between him and his dad, and it's just, because he still apologized, like, I'm sorry, wasn't it? He was like, I know. But the fact of the matter is, mom is going to need you when I'm gone. So she's going to push you away and not want you, but be there for her. And even that cute moment later on when they're taking pictures, and it's still just kind of awkward and stuff like that. But the wedding was beautiful, and it, touched everybody, and it was just all just kind of like, like I said, the feels, it just becomes too much, and it's just like, like I said, it's a beautiful ceremony, but behind it just is this thing of like, enjoy it. It's a celebration of life, kind of like almost like what some people want their funeral to be kind of treated as, not like, not remembering the fact is I'm gone, but remembering like, hey, I lived this life. That has to be celebrated. It's almost like that in a sense, but it still has that lingering air of sadness. Saadvi is trying to work on her research and everything. Because she ends up going to her boss and finding out, it was someone from the government that shut down. It's like, well, which I suggested, obviously, it's like the major pulling a rug underneath her. She's trying to get in contact with Vance, which I think is interesting because this episode answers some questions that someone literally asked me in a previous episode. Like, hey, story's kind of all over the place, but where is Vance in the major? This episode kind of tiptoes us in that direction. We'll get, because Zombie's just trying to get in contact with Vance the entire time, but no luck. So Ben suggests, go contact his wife. Like, she definitely knows that he's alive, and she'll end up calling him and kind of letting him know what's up. So there's all that going down. Obviously, you have that trio of criminals outside of Ben's place waiting. It's interesting how things kind of play out because Jerry ends up leaving just while they're outside and everything. So, and obviously that tearful goodbye between Cal and Zeke, it's like, oh, it's like, I'll always kind of be with you even if I'm not here. And I'm like, dude, I was like, dude, like I said, it's like, it's a nice, like, little sibling moment between them like that. It's almost like, okay, he's almost, well, he is pretty much Uncle Zeke, but I think almost in a way, Cal probably almost looks at him almost like a big brother in a certain sense, a certain vein, but he is, part of the family and everything. So I thought it was kind of a neat moment, in the grand scheme of things. I didn't even talk about it either, but Michaela seeing her mom, like, was that the calling doing that or what? It's like she wishing her mom was there, and it's like in spirit and in essence she was. Like, was that just her being wishful, or is that the calling kind of rewarding her a little bit of like, oh, here's your mom, like, kind of giving you a nod, It wasn't even like her mom when she was sick, it was just her mom as she remembered her, before her being sick and everything. And it was just like, it's in the grand scheme of things, it was just a very, touching moment. Okay, so here is where we really get into what I consider like the meat and potatoes of like kind of like where this is all kind of heading. So I had a feeling, I kept being like, all right, that dude was this Jace. Like, I was like, is he one of the people? Is he kind of like an 828er, but is he kind of like Zeke or something? I was trying to figure that out, and I think this episode kind of answered that question for me. So basically, Vance finally got in contact with Saadvi, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of effed up that you got in contact with my wife at her work very publicly. He's like, I had to because, what's going down. It's like, yeah, the major's making, major moves, and the fact is she's closing up shop because he's like, whatever it is, basically the major finished up her research was what I was kind of insinuated and I kind of thought. And so he's like, for her, she's closing up shop, like shutting down Saadvi's research because you can't have anyone competing with your research, because you can't have anyone having access to what you're doing because you don't want to take the chance they might undo what you've done. And the moment that crossed my mind, I was like, that's what this is all about. I was like, are those trio the trial run? That's what I started immediately thinking. They're the trial run of what the major is up to potentially. I was like, that's really interesting. And then at the end, lo and behold, they end up taking Cal. And it's like, because she needs all the pieces and everything. So it's like, are they taking Cal just for their own sake? Or are they unknowingly, because once again, the whole point the major was trying to make is to be able to control the callings that way. It's like, it's almost meant to be like a military thing of like, you connect people on the psychic level of like, oh, this is your mission, and you point them in a certain direction. So maybe they're thinking they're taking Cal for the purpose of like, oh, I'm taking Cal so that I can get whatever stash the police took from him. That's why he's going after Michaela. But then I'm like, maybe they're subconsciously doing that. Well, maybe Jace is the one in particular, because the other two are afraid of him, so they might not have it. Jace might be the only one that has it, but he might have been like in prison, because like the whole thing was he was in prison like 4 months ago, and then, or no, he was in prison, but he got out 4 months ago. So it could have been a thing that the government, in particular the major, pulling like government powers and stuff, was able to get him out of jail or experiment on him while he was jail, and then got him released to kind of be her pawn. So like I said, I think he's supposed to be a trial run, and maybe that stash that they took from him isn't just about meth. Maybe this is connected to maybe some drugs that kind of help the process along, the one that kind of replicates the calling in some shape or form. But that's what I think this is all about. That's what I think it's about. Like, that's why I think that's what the exploding plane was about. It means the major is coming to destroy what we've, like, that plane, the plane blowing up, the plane is a representation of what they went through. And I think it could be one of two things. Either it's just supposed to be a representation of like your representation as passengers, and your connection to the calling is being threatened by this other group. Some other group is being created who can use the callings and stuff like that, jeopardizing that. Or maybe it's supposed to mean that people with, like, maybe it's just kind of like, oh, they can coexist. But my other thought is that maybe with this new creation of people with the callings, it sullies and destroys theirs. So what Adrian had talked about these callings and everything, because even Michaela was thinking like maybe we were meant to let them go so that their lab would explode. But then that makes you think like that has to be the major covering up stuff, right? Because it is interesting that it would explode afterwards, but it's like there had to be traces of whatever they're up to there. So like, does Jace know? Because he knows that he thinks it's all from a whole higher calling and stuff like that. He's like almost like a holy wrath I'm gonna bring down. So that makes me think he is having callings and stuff like that, not realizing they're man-made callings and not whatever it is the 828ers or even Zeke's situation is, That's my immediate thought about all of this. I could be wrong. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us, whether we end up finding out there's truth to it. But this is where my mind is. I'm thinking this is definitely what that represents, that they're pawns. In particular, I think, like I said, I think Jace is the only one that has the callings. The others might, they might not, but I think that's why they're afraid of him, because he knows so much the way he does, and he thinks it's some, like I said, higher holy power, when in actuality it isn't. Because like I said, this is the Major cleaning up, now that she's kind of got all she needs. So obviously Vance wants to get Saadvi into hiding, but Saadvi's like, no, I'm not going to run from her. I'm actually going to be basically hunting her, so it's going to be interesting. But next week's episode is the season finale. Completely caught me off guard. I was like, wait, what? Because I know that season 1 was actually going to be a little shorter, I think, but I think they extended it to 16 episodes, so it might have been originally 13. But so, like, this, I guess I was expecting this to be like a 22 episode season, so for it to be like, oh yeah, next week's the season finale, I was like, wait, what? Okay. So I think we're really definitely going to see like this whole Vance and Major situation. That's why I'm like, this kind of tiptoes into answering that person's question about, well, where's Vance and where's the Major? We're definitely going to get answers to what, because the Vance was saying that he was doing a lot of stuff out of country. Like I said, I figured it was about tracking down the Major, especially considering he knows her real identity now. So we will ultimately have to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the season finale. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good